As you know, I'm a Dupree resident, and I've been here for about 8 years now. So I'm one of the older codgers in the group, I'm probably approaching 94 years. So I was in the early days of World War II, and I'll tell you how that started. I went to high school in Davenport, Iowa, and I took ROTC in Davenport, Iowa. And when I went to college in Seattle at the University of Washington, they wanted me to start taking ROTC over again. And I said, hey, I've done all this nonsense. I don't want to take ROTC. They said, well, do you want to go into advanced ROTC? So I said, sure. They put me right into advanced ROTC as a freshman. And by the time World War II hit, I was almost a senior in advanced ROTC. And the government came after me to pull me right out of school. In the early part of my junior year, I was pulled out and sent to war after I had advanced ROTC.
Tell us what year and what date this was, if you can remember.
Well, this was my beginning of my third year in college. I was a junior, of course, at that time. And what year?
Was this when Pearl Harbor, is 1941?
Yeah. This is World War II I'm talking about, but I graduated from high school in '39.
Okay.
And in 41 I was pulled into the service.
Okay.
And Pearl Harbor happened right after that. And
okay.
I'm pulled into the service and immediately sent to a military camp on the east coast of the U.S. in North Carolina to learn about anti-aircraft and anti-aircraft shooting. And I guess I became an expert on that because I spent 3 or 4 months in a camp in North Carolina. And then I had my choice of picking what camp I would go to after I graduated out of this camp, and I said I like California. So I went to a camp you've probably never heard of called Camp Hahn, H-A-A-N. It's near Los Angeles, but it's up in the uphill desert. So I was there for a while. I was the only officer in that uphill camp, and all the equipment was being delivered to it, but nobody to receive it. And troops started showing up, and I was in charge of the whole damn mess for about 4 or 5 months until the officer corps for that camp had been sent from someplace in the U.S. And they got there, and I turned over the camp to them. And
what was your rank at that time?
I was a captain by then.
Nice.
I'd already spent a few years in the service. Wait a minute, no, that was my beginning. And I was a second lieutenant.
Okay.
And then, let's see, I got sent away from that camp to go back to the same training camp I'd been before, Camp Davis, North Carolina, so I was there for another period of time. And it's probably due to the fact that I went to the anti-aircraft training camp twice that I was very lucky and picked up by a general to be one of his staff. And here I am, a second lieutenant, and he wanted somebody who was an expert in 40mm anti-aircraft guns, and it turned out that I was that guy. And whether for good or bad, I don't know. But anyway, I met up with this General Lorette Stewart, who was a West Pointer, and
Stewart was his. I'm sorry, Stewart was his last name.
Yes.
Okay.
S-T-U-A-R-T.
Yeah.
Lorette Stewart, if you want the first name, but L-A-H-R-E-T-T. And he had a staff of, he came in with a full colonel reporting to him, a lieutenant colonel reporting to him, 3 majors reporting to him, and me reporting to him. And I think I was still a second lieutenant at that time. Luckily, with him, I got to be a captain, and that was where I spent most of the war. But anyway, he used me a lot to go around to new anti-aircraft battalions before the war really broke out much in Europe, before the Normandy beachhead. And General used me a lot, sending me around to interview and talk to people and explain how to use the anti-aircraft guns. Well, anyway, we're in the southeast part of the U.S. waiting to get orders to go overseas spent a lot of time in the Louisiana maneuver area, I guess it was called, in eastern Texas, where they would take entire military divisions from the U.S. and they'd face them off against one another to have a mock fight for a couple of months at a time. And that was a very weird experience. One U.S. division fighting another U.S. division, not shooting, but doing everything else bad. And the worst thing that happened was that there were some tank battalions in that, and it rained a lot in that area. A lot of guys would climb under the tanks at night to sleep, keep out of the rain. And they never got up alive again. Of course, the tanks would just come down on them like that.
Jeez.
That was kind of a mess, but that happened all the time.
Yeah.
And
That's just in training.
yeah. Anyway, I went with my outfit. We were going to be in the Normandy invasion in Europe, and somehow that got called off, and our orders were changed to go to the South Pacific. And we went there with our headquarters company, which had probably 100 wonderful troops there, and us 6 or 7 officers. And we had a lot of communications people, because there was a lot of communication that the general had to offer to all the other battalions on what to do and what not to do. And anyway, we got set to go overseas, and we were out in San Francisco, and they loaded many troops, not just our outfit, but many troops onto cargo ships and freighters and things like that, and we got onto our freighter. And they said, well, you can't go with this big convoy because it'd be too dangerous. You can't go with the convoy, you got to go by yourself. Well, that was kind of a shock. But they said, you can go due south in the Pacific to get across the Pacific. We said, what are they talking about? He said, well, you go due south, and you're going to take a zigzag course all the way across the Pacific. So you go for a couple hours and you make a right turn. Then you make a couple of more hours, you make a left turn. And you go zigzag all the way. And then every few minutes, we had to make another 90-degree course change on these zigs and zags. It took us 39 days in a freighter to get across the Pacific. We never saw a Jap. We had a gun crew on the freighter that was, we'd stop every now and then and use the guns for practice, and I guess we felt pretty good about that. And anyway, eventually, we got across the Pacific. We went to New Guinea, which was almost no fighting anymore. There were Japs near Hollandia, but we didn't get involved in that.
What was this? What year was this? 1944?
Oh, it would have been earlier than that.
Okay. The D-Day was on June 1944, and you said you went this instead of D-Day?
I thought this was before. What's D-Day?
June 6, 1944.
Well, that's not when the war started, isn't
The
it?
war started September 1, 1939.
Well, that's
And
closer to my time.
Yeah, and the Pearl Harbor was December 7, 1941.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I was in the service a few months after that.
Yeah. So
Then-
when did you go to New Guinea, Rupp? Do you remember?
Probably early 42.
Okay.
And anyway, we got to New Guinea. There was some fighting in Hollandia, which is a town on the north side of New Guinea. And I'll tell you an interesting thing that didn't have much to do with the war. We were in camp. Oh, when we got over there, we came down the landing nets to get on shore,
Yeah.
and eventually get all of our equipment off. And we got there, and there is a little pole stuck in the ground with a white man's head on it. And it turned out that these were some guys who just landed there who started to monkey around with some of the native ladies up in the hillside. And there wasn't any sign there, but the message was pretty clear. Don't monkey with our ladies. That was true. So anyway, we landed with landing nets, got up there. I was there 2 or 3 months with the general staff, which is about, well, he had a battery, a headquarters battery of maybe less than 100 troops. And he had, as I said, about 6 or 8 officers, of which I was one. And we were there, and then I heard that I was going to go especially up to the north to the Philippine Islands, which were quite a ways north of New Guinea, by myself. No, not with anybody in my battery, but I was gonna go by myself for my outfit with 3 other lieutenants. And we were to encounter several anti-aircraft outfits and show them how to shoot down airplanes. And I was an expert in some new equipment that was going to be shipped overseas to power these anti-aircraft guns much better. So that in anti-aircraft guns, there's a box on a